And today we are going to talk about my critical remix analysis of the novel The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton using paratextual features throughout the novel. I incorporated some key elements and remixed them into my own creative take while also incorporating new components that I've drawn in order to further analyze the novel and the counterstory I believe it celebrates. The Outsiders repeatedly depicts situations and recurring motifs of violence and animosity between the socials and the greasers due to their socioeconomic disparity, and ultimately resists the single-story aspect that just because someone grows up without the same education, economic opportunities, and social class statuses, that this does not make them any less valuable or successful as someone who does. This novel celebrates the counterstory that someone like Ponyboy can, at any point, always try to turn their life around and achieve more and create something of themselves in the end, as seen at the end of the novel when the reader realizes that Ponyboy was writing his school essay about everything that happened to him and telling his story. By remixing my own take of the Outsider's dust-covered jacket and utilizing paratextual evidence, I hope to show you how I have creatively called attention to this counterstory and how I believe the novel celebrates this. Paratextual elements used in my project include cover art on the front and back flaps, choice of color and positioning of words and images, as well as the overall choice layout of my remixed dust-covered jacket. Now let's start with my front cover, which depicts several paratextual elements that I believe help to illuminate on the counterstory that this novel ultimately portrays in the end. I chose to visually dissect these single-story issues and plot points from the novel by beginning with the thematic repetition of violence amongst the rival gangs due to their socio-economic differences, and how this proves that the novel ultimately celebrates Ponyboy's life as a counter-story. For my first paratextual element, I chose to draw a big burning fire engulfing the bottom of the page to give insight as to the destruction, violence, and pain the characters face due to the socioeconomic single story put upon them by the greasers and socials, and how Ponyboy tries to overcome this in the end despite being repeatedly held down by different elements throughout the novel. Next, I chose to draw the church atop the fire becoming engulfed by the destructive flames to indicate how some of the institutions represented in this novel have fueled the single stories put on Ponyboy and his gang, such as the media and authority figures, but how the religious undertones and church of this novel demonstrate that men are all created equal and can morally rise above their sinful natures by repenting and rejecting single story facets placed upon them. For example, when Johnny K takes back his threat to commit suicide, he says, "Well, I won't, but I gotta do something. It seems like there's gotta be some place without greasers or socials, with just people, plain ordinary people." This shows that, like Ponyboy, the constant threat of violence from the socials is coloring Johnny's world, his dream of a place where people get past such divisions, and in a way, he found that place in the church. I believe that the paratextual imagery reflects the common and equal nature that every man has through the religiously Christian subtext of the novel. Next, as you can see, I drew a train track dividing the two sides of the front cover above the church to physically show the division between the east and west side gangs. This demonstrates how the locations of the two rival gangs depict socioeconomic disparities depending on which side the character live on, with paratextual characteristics from the book to more clearly show the single story the novel calls attention to. And when we look at the back cover, you will see how I believe the novel resists that single story and ultimately celebrates it as a counterstory. Now for the west side, I chose to draw a classic Chevy Corvette logo, and on the east side a pair of tennis shoes to represent the socioeconomic disparity between the two locations and rival gangs that they reside in, as the socials drive around in cars, whereas the greasers walk everywhere because they can't afford to buy a car to drive in. This visualization also works to fuel the fire drawn below the images to visually depict the mounting tensions between the rival characters and gangs. For example, this socioeconomic disparity is demonstrated when Ponyboy says, "Do you think that your spying for us makes up for the fact that you're sitting there in a Corvette while my brother drops out of high school to get a job? Don't you ever try to give us handouts and then feel high and mighty about it." Ponyboy expresses how he feels about this unfair disparity and that there's a real problem and he wants help, not just gestures and pity from people with privilege. Finally, as you can see, I drew a comb to symbolize how much appearances play in this novel, both outward and inwardly, which define the character's socioeconomic class in different ways. For example, when Ponyboy talks about his appearance, he says, "It was my pride. It was long and silky. Our hair labeled us greasers too. It was our trademark. The one thing we were proud of. Maybe we couldn't have Corvairs and Madra suits, but we could have hair." Ponyboy is really into his appearance, but unlike clothes and shoes, hair is free and naturally good hair can be priceless. Interestingly, Pony's change in his hair coincides with the beginning of changes in his personality. The appearances of characters such as hairstyle, clothing, and cleanliness are described in great detail, in which the reader can identify the single story of socioeconomic deficits that is being portrayed throughout the novel, and come to the conclusion by the end of the novel that these things don't make a person's fate sealed, and can overcome things such as these through determination and the right group of supportive friends and family to help see you through hard times. For the spine, I put the author's name, title of the book, and publication name to make these seem more like an actual desk cover jacket for a book. I also took the creative liberty to draw a knife and mirror to symbolize the violence that occurred throughout the novel and the introspective ideology behind taking a good look at yourself in the mirror. Now for the back cover, I wrote out the book summary as well as put some details such as awards that the book achieved and the back pricing sticker to make the back cover look more realistic. I also drew a sunset to symbolize the universal and equal relationship every person has with nature. This represents how no matter what a class a person is associated with, the experience and beauty of nature will always be the same for all. For example, this is demonstrated when Cherry Valance speaks with Ponyboy about this very aspect and says, "Maybe the two different worlds we live in weren't so different. We saw the same sunset." This gets Ponyboy thinking about nature, something he loves, and is a connecting factor that doesn't care about class or wealth. We see here that this is a pivotal point in the novel that makes it in order to resist these single stories of fundamental socioeconomic disparity and celebrate the oneness every person should have the opportunity of knowing. Next, as you can see, I drew a balancing scale to represent the choices Ponyboy and other characters must face throughout the novel and ultimately decide for themselves whether they can move past the single story that is being portrayed on them or if they succumb to it and let their socioeconomic class disparities define them. I believe that Ponyboy at the end of the novel, as displayed on my back cover of my jacket, shows that he wants to rise above the single story and celebrate his life as a counter story. For example, one sort of choice that proves the characters are becoming more aware and growing into morally better characters, Ponyboy says, "Derry and I would probably still have misunderstandings. We were too different not to, but no more fights. We couldn't do anything to hurt Soda. Instead of blindly thrashing out at each other, Derry and Pony make a conscious decision not to fight, therefore trying to resist their single-story predicament by becoming and doing better." Another example of this is when Ponyboy says, "It was too vast a problem to be just a personal thing. There should be some help. Someone should tell them before it was too late." Pony wants to represent and reach out to other boys in his class. In this case, the class of boys who struggle against their economic situations, who are involved in violence and feel spurned by the rest of society. I also put 2 quotes taken from the passages in the novel on stickers to give a little more paratextual insight into my critical remix project. Now for my 2 flaps inside. I made these to look just like some you would find in a real book desk jacket. The green one on the right has a little more descriptive summary of the novel than how the back cover was written, and the purple is about the author S.E. Hinton's life and career, as well as a little bit more information about the novel and how many copies have been sold. I chose to use the colors purple and green for these flaps because, when folded as a real book desk cover jacket would be, the green side would represent the West Side gang and the purple the East Side. The empty space between them is a metaphorical distance that the socioeconomic class dividers put between them are there, but once the book is actually inserted between the cover flaps and the reader begins reading their journey through Ponyboy's eyes, I believe it will show and celebrate his counter story that he tries to make at the end of the novel. My reasoning and logic for wanting to examine this counter story I addressed through the paratextual elements and remix of My Outsiders desk cover jacket was because I believed the issues and concepts I addressed warranted more attention from readers because they themselves might be going through a similar situation or feeling the same as Ponyboy about their socioeconomic statuses. My motivation for addressing this particular counter story over others is because the audience who are reading this novel are within middle school and high school curriculum bracket and might find peace of mind by my analysis if they feel like they're going through something similar. I believe that if everyone given the chance had the determination to do so, wanted to achieve more for themselves and fight single story facets and prejudice said or thought about them, could do it. And this novel, for me, celebrates that counter story of aspiring and reaching for more in seemingly hopeless situations. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. I hope you enjoyed my desk cover jacket as I did in making it, and I'll talk to you later.